Hello and welcome to the TU Sports Extra podcast. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by TU beat writer John Trancina. John, always good to be with you, talking a little TU football, and we'll talk a little TU hoops later. It's officially time to start talking about basketball, so we'll get to that. First, let's talk TU versus Temple, a game that you thought TU was going to get, and they did. What you make of Friday's win?
Yeah, it wasn't pretty by any means, but they did need to have it, and they did. So, I mean, you got to say that what you can about that. It was another one of those games where, and they've had alarmingly a few of these, where the first TU offensive possession resulted in the other team getting a touchdown. This one started off poorly with that one. Davis Brin got intercepted and it was returned for a touchdown. Those are tough ones, but they bounced back from that. They were down 10-0 actually after the first quarter, so it didn't look very good for a while there. But they bounced back. They had a really good second quarter. Brin responded and had a good quarter. Obviously, Deneric Prince with an outstanding day. I know you want to get to him in a minute. So that was a big part of that win. They really built up a pretty good lead, kind of held on a little bit in the fourth quarter. You saw a lot of good things and you saw some things that concerned you, but the biggest thing obviously is that they came out of there with a win.
Yeah, fair point. So Deneric Prince, 200 career high, 231 yards. Where'd that come from?
Yeah, I know, right? Where did it come from? Before we go to him, I should have said this. A big part of that win was also on the defense. I mean, they gave up 16 points and 7 of them were because of the interception. So they really only gave up 9, a field goal and a touchdown. So it was a really good performance by the defense. As for Prince. Yeah, I mean, his third game of the season. He had a terrible previous game where he had -5 yards against Navy, but he came through with a huge performance in this one against Temple. The really key play of this game basically was a 84-yard touchdown run he broke early in the fourth quarter that made it a 14-point game and kind of gave Tulsa a little bit of breathing room there late in the game. He was big. You got to give some credit to the offensive line. Everybody else on this team has, including him. So they all, the offensive line gets a good fair bit of credit for opening holes up for him and allowing him to run through. Another part of that we must acknowledge is that Temple clearly was overloading their defense to block the pass. So there was that opening there, a little more of an opening for the running game to succeed. But Prince really needed to take advantage of that, and boy did he. So that was a great performance by him.
Let's talk about Davis Brin for a second. Been a little up and down lately. What's going on with him?
Yeah, he has been. I don't know how much, if you can put it all on him. So here's the stat breakdown, which I did, and it's pretty startling. First 4 games, he had 12 touchdowns and 1 interception. The last 3 games, he's thrown for 4 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. It's a little bit more. He's looked more like the guy we had last year when he threw a nation high 16 interceptions through the season. But I will say this, part of that has been, there's a couple of factors in there. He's been injured. So for a couple of those games, he could barely even move in the pocket. So that contributed to a lot of it. And B, the protection wasn't really very good. The first, corresponding with those stats, is the first 4 games he was sacked 10 times total. The last 3, 20. So that just gives you an idea of when he has less time and he's being rushed. And a couple of those interceptions have been on throws where he's hit as he's throwing the ball and the trajectory changes and it goes to the defense. So some of the, maybe a few of them you could say, knowing he had little time, he shouldn't have thrown them. But clearly the lack of protection contributed to that, and his lack of mobility, which you'd like to think, A, he's getting better. He looked like he was moving around a lot better in that game against Temple. And B, hopefully the protection will improve as the offensive line does, and the more they get. There's other factors in there, and so we'll see how it goes. But it's clearly he needs, if he's got the time, he's gonna do a lot better.
So TU welcomes SMU to town on Saturday, 2:30 kickoff. Boy, John, it feels like forever since TU's had a home game. So that's pretty cool. SMU kind of in the same boat as TU a little bit, both 3-4, both 1-2 in the American. How do you see this one shaking out?
Yeah, this is going to be a tough battle. And SMU has some momentum themselves. They're coming off a really close loss to Cincinnati. They lost just by 2 points, so 29-27. So that was a close one. They feel like they're coming in with some momentum. The big matchup in this game is definitely going to be, can Tulsa stop the passing game of SMU? They have a very similar honestly, their numbers are almost identical. They have a very similar offensive game that Tulsa does. Really powerful passing game. Tanner Mordecai is their quarterback. He had transferred from OU before last season, and he's put up some incredible numbers there at SMU the last 2 years. He's had a great year. He's got just like TU does, he's got a great receiver, Rashee Rice. In fact, Rashee Rice and Keelan Stokes are tied for second in the nation with 114.6 passing yard or receiving yards per game. So that's how identical these teams are. It's amazing. But so that's going to be a key to this game. Their offense is, derives mostly from that passing game, and that's going to be a good one. And the question mark for SMU coming in is that Mordecai seemed to get hurt in the previous game. Late in the third quarter, they had their backup. Preston Stone came in. He's a redshirt freshman, hadn't really had much action. He came in, he did pretty good. He scored, threw a touchdown, was 74 yards or something like that. So he kept that offense moving. There's no word really on who's going to play. In his weekly press conference on Tuesday, Coach Montgomery said they were going to prepare for either one, but he thought that Mordecai would end up playing. So we'll see what happens there. But and he also pointed out that even if it's not Mordecai, they have a very similar style. Their offenses are run pretty much the same way, and it probably wouldn't change a whole lot. So that's still going to be even if it's Stone in there, it's going to be a formidable offense that we'll be facing.
Now, TU has a couple of banged up cornerbacks. How does that fit in?
Yeah, that's true. And Coach Montgomery said that was they were both day to day. That's Kenny Solomon and Tyon Davis. They're both got hurt in the second half of that game. Actually, Solomon was in the second quarter, Davis in third, and didn't return. And each of them got hurt in the Temple game. They had a couple of younger backups come in. Sean O'Keefe and Reggie Ellis both came in as guys who had don't really see a whole lot of action before that, but they came in and both did pretty well. And so Coach Montgomery said that each Solomon and Davis are day to day. They may or may not play. He wasn't sure yet. But if they didn't, he was confident with Ellis and O'Keefe going in as in their place if that was the case. So yeah, when you're facing an offense as strong as SMU's with that being their strength, that's a concern. But we'll see how that works out.
Sure. Let's switch to basketball for just a half second. You've written a couple basketball stories. You've obviously talked to Coach Conkle a couple of times. You've also watched practice, which is pretty cool. There was a time back, 100 years ago when beat writers would, often watch practice. Well, I guess it wasn't that long ago, but it's been a while. That's kind of a rarity these days,
Right.
but you've had some insight and have seen a practice. What's an Eric Conkle practice look like in terms of how he conducts the practice? What's it like?
Yeah, he gets the players going pretty intense in practice. It's kind of interesting to see. It's amazingly structured, actually. I've never seen a practice so well structured. In fact, on the I guess at the scorers table, there's a bunch of sheets of paper that I guess every player has seen that the coaches follow that actually has the practice pointed out, but laid out by to the minute, like from 2:30 to 2:36, we're going to work on this drill. From 2:37 to 2:40, there's going to be this drill. 2:41 to 2:42, we'll have a water break. I mean, it's pretty amazing the detail and the structure that goes into the practice. As we found out at the happens in practice in terms of statistics. So every player is getting graded. They're accumulating stats based on how they play in every single drill. And then at the end of the week, they name a cane of the week based on their stats from practice, as well as, as long as they don't get into any trouble off the court kind of thing. So there's a character aspect to it as well, but then they get named the cane of the week and they get to wear a different jersey in practice. So apparently that has also helped kind of stoke some more intensity into the practices that maybe sometimes lags a little bit without that kind of thing. Players want to be the one wearing that jersey, and so they're like fighting. Like some of the players were telling me about how guys are battling each other for rebounds because that's going to help their stats, and they might so they could wear the jersey. So it's pretty interesting.
He seems like he would not be a yeller screamer type. He comes off to me like he would be a very deliberate teacher type, kind of very specific teaching / coaching. Am I right, or am I totally off on that? You've seen it, I haven't.
No, your instincts are right there. They're right on. That's exactly how he is. He's very measured in his comments during practice. I don't think I heard him raise his voice once. He kind of, the words he says are pointed sometimes. This guy's got to do this. This guy's got to do that. You have to be here, that kind of thing. But he never raised his voice. He's very deliberate. He's, respectful of the guys. It's interesting because that's another thing that I'm not used to seeing at a sports team's practice. A coach who is so in control of his emotions and so reserved but deliberate and specific with what he's saying when he delivers the message. It's an interesting style.
He joined Bryce McInnes, Coach Conkle did, for a TV podcast back when he first got hired. And I just really like his energy, John. I just like his vibe and his energy. I thought he came off great. I'm kind of rooting for him. I really am. I think he seems like a good guy, good coach, a teacher type. So yeah, and there's something to be said for new energy. I feel like he's bringing that. So you'll be keeping a close eye on that and writing about it, and we'll get deeper into basketball later, but we'll leave it there for now. All right, John, let's call it good for this week. Appreciate the knowledge as always. Thank you folks for checking us out. John and I come at you every Thursday, usually around noon. You can download us for free on Google, Apple, or Spotify. Thank you for listening, and John, we'll see you next week.